The polished marble floor of the lobby reflected the city skyline, each window a testament to a world I had built from ash. Sarah stood before my assistant's desk, her voice sharp and entitled, completely unaware that I could hear every word through the intercom on my desk. She hadn't changed, the same perfectly styled hair, the same expensive handbag, the same arrogant tilt to her chin. 10 years had passed, but she still wore her superiority like a second skin. My assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, was holding her ground professionally, but I could sense her frustration. I pressed the button. "It's fine, Chloe. Send her in." The door to my office opened, a heavy slab of glass and steel that swung open silently. Sarah walked in, her eyes scanning the panoramic view, the custom furniture, the sheer scale of the space. A flicker of something, greed, regret, crossed her face before she masked it with a confident smile. She strode toward my desk as if she owned the place, her heels clicking with an unnerving rhythm. I remained seated, my hands steepled, watching her. She didn't recognize me at first. My face had hardened over the years, the boyish optimism replaced by a stillness I had earned in the trenches of failure and rebirth. "I'm here to see the CEO, she announced, stopping in front of my desk. "I have a personal matter to discuss with him. It's about Phoenix Innovations." "You're speaking to him," I said, my voice calm and even. The recognition dawned on her slowly, a wave of disbelief washing over her perfectly made-up face. Her mouth opened slightly. "Ethan? No, it can't be." Her eyes darted around the room again, trying to reconcile the man she had thrown away with the empire surrounding her. She thought I was a ghost, a cautionary tale she told her new friends about her starter marriage. She had no idea that the divorce papers she'd thrown at my feet like trash were the very key that unlocked this entire kingdom. You're probably wondering why I would even let her through the door. To understand that, you have to understand what she and my family did to me when I had nothing left but my name. Her stunned silence was the first dividend I'd collected in a decade. But to truly appreciate the moment, you have to rewind. Go back 10 years to a different office, a much smaller one, with peeling paint and cardboard boxes where custom art should have been. The key to Innovatech, my first company, felt cold and useless in my hand. It wouldn't turn. The landlord had changed the locks. My dream was over. I was standing in a sterile hallway, staring at a door that had once been my gateway to the future, now just a monument to my failure. My phone was a constant buzz of angry investors and anxious employees I could no longer pay. Each vibration felt like a small electric shock to my nervous system. I had lost everything, not just the money, but the years of sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the belief that I was building something that mattered. I drove home in a daze. The world outside my car windows seemed to be moving in fast forward while I was trapped in a slow, suffocating present. When I walked through the front door, Sarah was there. She wasn't rushing to comfort me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She was standing in the middle of our living room, arms crossed, with a look of pure, undiluted disgust on her face. "The bank called," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "They declined my card at the boutique." That was her first concern, not me, not our life together, a declined credit card. "It's over, Sarah," I managed to say, my own voice sounding hollow and distant. "The company, it's gone. It's all gone." She stared at me, her eyes sweeping over me as if I were something she had stepped in. "You mean you lost it all?" she corrected me. "My father warned me about you. He said you were a reckless dreamer, not a real businessman." There was no we, no us. There was only you and your failure. I thought her coldness in that moment was the worst pain I could possibly feel. I was naive. The true soul-crushing betrayal was still waiting for me, ready to be delivered by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. That night, the house felt less like a home and more like a museum of a life that was no longer mine. Sarah slept in the guest room. The silence from behind her closed door was louder than any argument. I knew what I had to do. There was one last place to turn, one final hope. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house, the place where I grew up, feeling like a child again, about to confess a terrible mistake. I found them in the living room with my older brother Mark. He was the golden child, the lawyer, the one who had followed the safe path my parents had laid out for him. He wore a crisp suit even on a Saturday and sipped his coffee with an air of unshakable confidence. When I told them what had happened, a heavy silence fell over the room. My mother just wrung her hands, her eyes darting nervously between my father and Mark. It was my father who spoke first, his voice laced with a weary disappointment that was far more painful than anger. "I always knew this would happen, Ethan," he said, not looking at me but at the wall above my head. "Chasing these pipe dreams. Technology, apps, all this nonsense. Look at your brother. Mark has a stable career. He has a pension. He didn't waste his education on fantasies." I flinched. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a character assassination. "Dad, I'm not asking you to understand the business. I'm asking for help, a loan, just to get back on my feet." Mark let out a small, condescending laugh. "A loan? To do what? Start another failing company? Ethan, you need to face reality. You're not cut out for this. Maybe you could get a job at the post office, something steady." He said it like he was giving me sage advice, but his eyes were gleaming with smug satisfaction. This was what he had always wanted, to see me fail, to prove that his boring, safe life was the superior choice. My mother said nothing, her silence a vote for their side. They weren't just refusing to help me, they were kicking me when I was down, confirming every fear I had that their love was conditional. I had lost my company, and now, in that sterile living room, I had lost my family too. I walked out of that house a stranger, utterly alone. I didn't know it at the time, but Sarah was already on the phone with her lawyer, preparing to serve the final papers that would sever me from my old life completely. I came back to a house that was already being stripped of my existence. Sarah had been busy. Framed photos of us were gone from the mantelpiece, replaced by empty spaces that seemed to accuse me. My clothes were packed into garbage bags near the front door. She didn't waste any time. She was sitting at the dining room table with a manila envelope in front of her, looking as serene as a surgeon before an operation. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "I spoke to my lawyer," she said, her voice flat, "and to your brother. Mark agrees this is for the best. He said you were always a bad investment." The fact that she had conspired with my brother, that they had discussed me like a failed stock, was a fresh stab of pain I didn't know I was capable of feeling. She slid the envelope across the polished wood table. "These are the divorce papers. It's a clean break, Ethan. The house is in my name. Dad paid the down payment, remember? The car too. The joint account is almost empty, but I've taken what's left to cover my expenses until the divorce is final." She was liquidating our marriage. There was no emotion, no sadness, just the cold, hard logic of cutting her losses. I picked up the papers. The cheap paper felt heavy, each page an official declaration of my uselessness. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "A decade together, and this is how it ends." She finally looked at me then, and her eyes were completely empty of the woman I thought I had married. "It ended the day you chose your little project over a stable life. I can't be anchored to a failure, Ethan. I'm still young. I still have a chance to build a real life with a real man." She stood up, grabbing her purse and keys from the counter. She didn't even glance at the garbage bags full of my things. They were just part of the trash she was taking out. At the door, she paused. "Don't try to contact me. My lawyer will handle everything." The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was absolute. In the span of 48 hours, I had lost everything and everyone. I was standing in an empty house that was no longer mine, holding a stack of papers that legally erased me from the life I had built. I wasn't just broke, I was a ghost. A friend of mine from college, Dave, let me crash on his couch. He was a good guy who didn't ask too many questions. For weeks, that lumpy sofa was my entire world. The ceiling above it became the screen on which my failures played on a loop. My father's condescending tone, Mark's smug grin, Sarah's cold, empty eyes as she handed me the divorce papers. Their voices became a constant chorus in my head, confirming the one thing I had started to believe, that I was worthless. I had tried to build something, to create, to reach for more than the safe, predictable life they all worshipped, and I had been punished for it. The days blurred into a grey fog of inertia. I'd wake up when Dave left for work and just lie there, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me, a physical force that made it hard to breathe. I barely ate. I didn't answer calls. I was paralysed by the shame. It was more than just losing a company or a marriage. It felt like I had lost my right to exist. I was the family cautionary tale, the failed dreamer, the scapegoat for everyone else's fears and insecurities. Mark was the hero for staying on the path, and I was the villain for daring to forge my own. My ambition wasn't seen as a virtue, but as a fatal flaw. One afternoon, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a cracked crown, something shifted. The deep, aching grief began to burn with a different kind of energy. It was anger, a cold, quiet anger that started deep in my gut. An anger at their betrayal, their smug certainty, their utter lack of faith. They hadn't just watched me fall, they had pushed me. They had written my story for me, casting me as the failure. And in that moment, I decided I was going to write a new ending. The numbness receded, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The self-pity was a poison, and the only antidote was action. They thought they had buried me. They had no idea they had just planted a seed. That cold anger became my fuel. I got off Dave's couch and started moving. My first stop was a public library, where I spent hours every day, not looking for a job, but dissecting my own failure. I went over every document from Innovatech's bankruptcy that I could find online. The creditors had picked the company's bones clean, taking every patent, every piece of hardware, every line of code they deemed valuable. But in the legal filings, buried deep in an appendix, was a list of assets deemed worthless and abandoned. On that list was a single item, a data compression algorithm I'd written years ago. It was an experimental side project, too radical and resource-intensive for the applications Innovatech was built for. Everyone, including my own engineers, had dismissed it as a dead end. The lawyers didn't want it. Sarah's divorce attorney hadn't even bothered to list it as an asset. It was officially, legally worthless. And because it was worthless, it was still mine. I took that algorithm back to Dave's garage, surrounded by lawn equipment and dusty boxes. I set up an old laptop and went to work. The world outside ceased to exist. All the pain, the humiliation, the rage. I channeled every ounce of it into lines of code. I reworked the algorithm, refined it, pushed it past its theoretical limits. I wasn't just writing a program, I was forging a weapon. I survived on instant noodles and the cheap coffee Dave would leave for me before heading to work. I slept on a cot in the corner, my dreams filled with scrolling text and complex logic. After 3 months of relentless work, I had a working prototype. It could compress massive datasets to a fraction of their size with staggering speed and efficiency. It was revolutionary. But I knew I couldn't build an empire from a garage alone. I needed a partner. I found him on a niche coding forum, an older, brilliant engineer named Ben, who had been pushed out of a major tech firm for being too disruptive. I sent him my prototype with a one-line email. They called this worthless. What do you think? He replied 2 hours later. They're fools. I'm in. What's our next move? We met for coffee the next day, and in that small cafe, we laid the foundation for our new company. We named it Phoenix Innovations. It was a promise to myself. From the ashes of the life they had burned to the ground, something new was going to rise, and this time it would be fireproof. The first 2 years of Phoenix Innovations were a brutal grind. Ben and I poured our life savings, what little we had, into renting a tiny, windowless office above a laundromat. The air constantly smelled of fabric softener and desperation. We worked 18-hour days, fueled by the hum of servers and the shared conviction that we were onto something monumental. We pitched our technology to dozens of venture capitalists. Most of them showed us the door the moment they saw my name. The failure of Innovatech was a black mark I couldn't erase. "The tech is impressive," one of them told me, "but we invest in people, and your track record is a liability." It was my father's lecture all over again, just with a more expensive suit. Every rejection was a fresh layer of cement on the wall I was building around myself. I let Ben, with his clean record and steady demeanor, become the public face of the company. I remained in the shadows, the ghost in the machine, the chief architect of a revolution no one could see yet. My anonymity became my shield and my strategy. While I was coding and building, I'd occasionally hear things about my old life. A distant cousin mentioned that Sarah had remarried some wealthy real estate developer. I once saw a photo of them on social media, clinking champagne glasses on a yacht in the Mediterranean. She looked happy, content in the gilded cage she had always wanted. Through the family grapevine, I heard my parents were bragging endlessly about Mark's promotion to junior partner at his firm. In their eyes, the world was unfolding as it should. The responsible son was rewarded, and the reckless one had vanished, presumably into a life of obscurity and mediocrity. They had no idea. They were celebrating a tidy little anthill while I was laying the foundations for a skyscraper. We finally got our break, not from a VC, but from a mid-level logistics company that was bleeding money from data storage costs. Our algorithms saved them millions in its first quarter. The case study from that one success was all we needed. Word began to spread through the industry like wildfire. We were no longer begging for meetings, they were coming to us. We were no longer just a startup above a laundromat. We were a quiet storm gathering strength just over the horizon. And no one, least of all the people who cast me out, could see the lightning about to strike. The next 18 months were a blur of explosive growth. The logistics company case study opened the floodgates. Suddenly, we were the hottest name in data management. Our technology was a miracle cure for corporate inefficiency, and everyone wanted it. We went from a team of 10 to 100, then 500. We moved out of the office above the laundromat and into a sleek glass tower downtown. The same VCs who had shown me the door were now begging for a piece of the company, offering valuations that were frankly obscene. But Ben and I held firm. We weren't selling, we were building. The tipping point came when a consortium of global banks approached us. Their data infrastructure was ancient and vulnerable, costing them billions. They didn't want to license our tech. They wanted us to build their entire next-generation security and storage platform from the ground up. It was a 10-year, multi-billion-dollar contract. It made us legendary overnight. The next logical step was an IPO. When Phoenix Innovations went public, the opening bell on Wall Street was like a starting pistol. The stock soared. By the end of the first day, our company was valued at over $10 billion. My name was on the SEC filings as the founder and majority shareholder. The business world was buzzing about the mysterious, reclusive tech genius who never appeared in public. They called me a ghost. That suited me just fine. While the world was talking about my net worth, I was sitting in the same modest apartment I'd rented after leaving Dave's couch. I hadn't bought a new car or a fancy watch. The money was irrelevant. It was never about getting rich, it was about getting even. The money wasn't the reward, it was the ammunition. I finally had the power to not just prove them wrong, but to hold them accountable. With unlimited resources and a network of powerful contacts, I started to look into the lives of the people who had cast me out. The world saw Phoenix Innovations as a billion-dollar empire. I saw it as a weapon, fully armed and aimed. And I had just learned that my first target, my brother Mark's prestigious company, was showing signs of serious trouble. My new position in the world gave me access to information. Power isn't just about money, it's about seeing the whole board. I hired a team of the best forensic accountants and private investigators on the planet, operating them through a discreet shell corporation. Their first task, to create a complete financial picture of my brother Mark, my parents, and my ex-wife Sarah. The reports that came back were more satisfying than any stock market rally. Mark, the stable golden child, was a fraud. He had risen through his firm not on talent, but on aggressive, high-risk strategies that were now backfiring spectacularly. His company was drowning in debt, leveraged to the hilt on a series of disastrous commercial real estate deals. And my parents, in a final foolish act of favoritism, had co-signed on his largest loans. They had gambled their home, their retirement, everything they had, on their perfect son. Sarah's new life was just as fragile. Her wealthy developer husband was a paper tiger. His entire portfolio was built on cheap credit, and with interest rates rising, his empire was beginning to implode. Their life on that yacht was a lie, funded by loans they could no longer afford. They were all playing a game they were about to lose, and they didn't even know I was in the casino. I began to move my pieces. Through a different set of shell companies, I started buying up Mark's debt from the banks. The banks were happy to offload the risky loans at a discount. Within a few months, I, through my anonymous holding company, was the primary creditor for my brother's business. I owned him. I owned my parents' future. They were marionettes, and I now held all the strings. I let the pressure build slowly, instructing my lawyers to start tightening the screws, calling in markers, and refusing extensions. I didn't have to push them off the cliff, I just had to let them fall. Their worlds were crumbling, and soon they would be desperate enough to seek out anyone who might offer a lifeline. It was only a matter of time before they were led, one by one, to the door of the most successful new company in the city. And as I predicted, my ex-wife Sarah would be the first to arrive, asking to see the powerful, reclusive CEO of Phoenix Innovations. And so there she was, standing in my office, the past and present colliding in this glass tower. The smug confidence she had entered with was gone, replaced by a ghastly pale shock. Her mind was visibly struggling to connect the dots, from the man she'd left in a stripped bare house to the man sitting behind a desk worth more than the car she'd taken from him. "Ethan, how?" she stammered, gesturing vaguely at the empire around her. Everyone said you were finished." "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," I said, my voice flat. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the wave of panic that was now rolling off her. "So, Sarah, you wanted to see me about a personal matter. Please, the floor is yours." She took a shaky breath, her composure crumbling. The mask of the wealthy socialite fell away, revealing the desperate, grasping woman underneath. "My husband, his business, it's all gone. We're losing everything." Her eyes then filled with a new, calculating light. The fear was being replaced by audacious greed. "Ethan, listen to me. When you were starting Innovatech, I was there. I supported you. We were a team. This company," she said, her voice gaining a sickening false strength. "It was built on ideas from that time. Our time. I deserve a part of this. It's only fair. I want my share." I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, letting her absurd, delusional claim echo in the vast space. Then I leaned forward. "Your share?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Let's talk about your share, Sarah. I remember your support. It looked a lot like you sleeping in the guest room. It sounded a lot like, 'I can't be anchored to a failure.' Your idea of a team was conspiring with my brother about what a bad investment I was. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city. This entire company, this billion-dollar empire, was built from the ashes of Innovatech. Specifically, it was built on one asset, a single algorithm that your divorce lawyer, the bankruptcy court, and you all agreed was legally worthless. It was the only thing you didn't take. So yes, in a way, you're right. I have you to thank. Your signature on that divorce decree, the one that left me with nothing but that worthless piece of code, was the single most profitable decision of my life. I turned back to face her. But it doesn't entitle you to a share. It entitles you to exactly what you left me with. Nothing. I pressed the intercom. Chloe, please have security escort Miss E. Miller out of the building. Sarah's tearful, angry exit from the lobby was, I imagine, quite a scene. I didn't watch. My focus was already on the next move. As I suspected, her humiliation sent a shockwave directly to the last remaining architects of my exile, my family. It took less than a day for the panicked call to come. It was my mother. Her voice, once laced with pity for me, was now thin and reeked of desperation. She begged to see me. I told her I was very busy, but my assistant would try to fit them in. I made them wait 2 days. They arrived together, my father, my mother, and my brother Mark, shuffling into the lobby like peasants summoned to the king's court. They looked small and lost amidst the soaring architecture and quiet hum of productivity. When Chloe led them into my office, their reaction was a mirror of Sarah's, but laced with a deeper, more familial shock. My father's jaw went slack. My mother let out a small gasp and put a hand to her chest. Mark, the golden child, looked like he had seen a ghost. His expensive suit hung on him loosely, and the circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. He was the first to find his voice, a weak, cracking version of its former arrogance. Ethan, my God, we had no idea. I know, I said, motioning for them to sit in the chairs opposite my desk. They sat down stiffly, a panel of defendants awaiting their sentence. My father, the man who had called my dreams nonsense, leaned forward, his hands trembling. Son, your brother. His company is in trouble. They're calling in his loans. We're going to lose the house. My mother started to sob quietly. Ethan, please, she whimpered. We're family. You're our son. You have to help us. I let her words hang in the air, the hypocrisy of them so thick I could taste it. Family, I repeated, my voice cold and even. Where was this family when I came to you with nothing left but the shirt on my back? Family is what I needed then. What I got was a lecture on pipe dreams from you, Dad. And Mark, I said, turning my gaze to my brother. I believe you suggested a steady job at the post office. Your faith in me was truly overwhelming. I paused, letting them squirm. You made your investment. You poured every dollar you had into the safe bet. You bet on the wrong son. Then I delivered the final blow. You came here to beg the CEO of Phoenix Innovations for a bailout. What you don't realize is that the anonymous creditor foreclosing on Mark's company, the one who owns every penny of his debt, is me. The color drained from their faces. They finally understood. This wasn't a family reunion, it was a foreclosure. My father slumped in his chair as if his bones had turned to dust. My mother's sobs became ragged, desperate gasps. Mark just stared at me, his face a mask of utter devastation. The smug lawyer who had once lectured me on reality was gone, replaced by a terrified man who finally understood it. But why? Mark whispered. To destroy us. I walked back to my desk and sat down, the picture of calm control. Destroy you? Number you did that to yourselves. I'm just collecting on a debt. It's simple business. The same kind of cold, hard business Sarah practiced when she liquidated our marriage. The same kind of business you endorsed when you told her she was doing the right thing. I looked at my father. You taught me a valuable lesson that day in your living room, Dad. You taught me that love and family are conditional. That respect is something you earn through success. Well, consider this my graduation. I learned the lesson. I swiveled my chair to face my computer, pulling up a document. The liquidation of Mark's company will proceed at 9 a.m. on Monday. My team will take possession of all company assets. As for the collateral, I looked at my parents. You will have 30 days to vacate the house before the bank, which I now hold the note for, takes possession. I'm not throwing you on the street, I'm just closing a bad investment. I didn't need to see them escorted out. I didn't need to watch their final, pathetic pleas. Their power over me was gone. The hold they had on my self-worth was shattered. I had spent 10 years thinking I needed to get revenge on them. But as I sat there in the silence of my office, I realized the revenge was never really about them. It was about me. It was about proving that the boy they threw away could build a world they couldn't even imagine. It was about exorcising their voices from my head. The news trickled back to me over the following months. Mark declared bankruptcy and now works as a paralegal, his name stripped from the letterhead. My parents sold what they had left and moved into a small rented apartment, living a life of quiet shame. Sarah's second divorce was quick, leaving her with nothing. Last I heard, she was working as a hostess in a restaurant, her youth and beauty fading under the harsh fluorescent lights. I took no joy in their ruin, only a quiet, profound sense of peace. My life was my own. My empire was built not on their approval, but on their rejection. I was free.